Stolen gold built half of Europe's cathedrals. But the empire that mined it was founded by a boy who had to crawl through dirt just to reach his mother. 13th century, West Africa. A griot stands before a king and sings a warning. Choose the woman nobody wants. Her child will swallow the sun. King Magan listens. He marries Sogolan, a woman the court openly despises. Their son, Sundiata, arrives with legs that bend like wet rope. Now here is what most people skip. Sundiata spent 7 years on the ground, not days. 7 years watching feet pass his face. 7 years memorizing who stepped over him and who stopped. That is not weakness, that is surveillance. A boy on the floor sees the architecture of power from underneath, and underneath is where the cracks always show. His stepmother, Sasuma, wanted him erased. She poisoned the court against Sogolan, turned servants into spies, made sure every meal carried humiliation alongside the rice. One afternoon, she sent her own son to mock Sundiata in front of the entire compound. That night, Sogolan wept. Sundiata did not. He asked a blacksmith for an iron rod. What happened next was not some magical moment. It was engineering. He studied weight distribution the way a builder studies load. He pressed that rod into red earth and forced his skeleton to negotiate with gravity. When he finally stood, the ground cracked beneath the rod. The blacksmith fainted. Exile followed. Sasuma made sure of it. But exile gave Sundiata something a palace never could. He crossed kingdoms, learned Fulani cavalry tactics, Soninke trade law, Mandinka battle drums. He collected alliances the way merchants collect debts. When the sorcerer king, Sumaoro Kante, crushed Mali under tribute and terror, Sundiata returned with an army stitched from 12 different peoples. At the Battle of Kirina, he broke Sumaoro's forces, and then did something conquerors almost never do. He built a constitution, the Mandan Charter, oral law granting rights to women, abolishing enslavement of allies, establishing trade protections across the Sahel. His empire became the richest on earth before Europe even had banks. Remember that next time someone calls this history obscure.
Every empire you ever heard of started with a deal, not a sword. Sundiata Keita didn't conquer West Africa because he was the strongest fighter on the battlefield. He conquered it because he was the smartest negotiator in the room. Forget the origin story for a second. Let me tell you what actually built Mali. When Sundiata finally came back from exile, he didn't just show up with an army. He showed up with alliances he'd been stitching together for years.
Every kingdom he passed through during those long wandering years, he left something behind. A promise, a trade agreement, a bond sealed over shared meals with leaders who remembered his name. See, Sumaoro Kante, the sorcerer king running Mali into the ground, he ruled through fear. Hoarded blacksmiths, controlled iron, taxed people until they had nothing. Classic tyrant playbook.
And Sundiata understood something most conquerors miss. You don't beat fear with bigger fear. You beat it with trust.
So when the Battle of Kirina finally happened, it wasn't one man against a tyrant. It was an entire coalition of kingdoms who chose Sundiata because he'd spent years listening to their problems and actually solving them.
And after the war, that's where it gets wild. He created the Kurukan Fuga, one of the oldest constitutional charters on earth.
It outlined rights, abolished certain forms of slavery, organized trade routes, and gave women protections that some modern nations still haven't figured out. Gold and salt flowed across the Sahara. Griots were appointed as living libraries. The empire became the richest on the planet.
Sundiata didn't just win a throne. He designed a civilization. And the blueprint is still singing through the mouths of griots today. That's not legend. That's architecture. Stolen. That is the word nobody uses when they talk about Sundiata's childhood. But that is exactly what happened. His future was stolen before he could even fight for it.
See, everyone focuses on the boy and his legs. Nobody talks about the women running the actual war behind the palace walls. Sasuma Barate did not just mock Sogolon out of cruelty, she was playing politics. Every insult, every public humiliation was a calculated move to make sure her own son sat on that throne. This was not a bully. This was a strategist dismantling a rival bloodline in broad daylight while the court watched and said nothing. And Sogolon? She was not just a grieving mother, she was a diplomat. When she took Sundiata into exile, she did not wander blindly. She called in debts. She moved between kingdoms like a chess piece nobody was tracking. She placed her son in courts where he could learn warfare, negotiation, and the economics of controlling trade routes. Every host kingdom was a classroom. Every meal shared with a future alliance being built. So when Sundiata finally returned, he did not just show up stronger, he showed up connected. He had a network of alliances stretching across West Africa that Sumaoro never saw coming. The Battle of Kirina was not won on that field. It was won years earlier in exile, in quiet conversations over shared meals, in promises made by a mother who understood power better than most kings ever did. Mali's empire was not built by one man who stood up. It was built by a woman who knew exactly where to run and a son smart enough to listen.
That changes the whole story, doesn't it?
The Kurukan Fuga is the most overlooked constitution in human history. 13th century West Africa produced a Charter of Rights before England even dreamed of the Magna Carta getting enforced. And the man behind it could not walk until he was 7 years old. But forget the standing up part. Everybody tells that part. Nobody talks about what Sundiata did after the war was over, after the blood dried in the savanna grass, after Sumaro fled into the mountains and became a whisper mothers used to scare children at night. Sundiata sat under a baobab tree and did something no conqueror was supposed to do. He listened. He gathered hunters, farmers, blacksmiths, griots, former enemies, women who ran trade routes longer than any army's march. And he asked them what the world should look like now. They built a charter. 44 clans received defined roles. Slavery by raid was restricted. Women's voices were written into the social contract through specific lineage protections. Trade corridors were declared neutral ground. A griot could not be harmed because memory itself was sacred infrastructure. This was not a king handing down law from a throne. This was a man who spent his childhood in the dirt, who ate borrowed meals across 3 different kingdoms during exile, designing a system where no single person could hoard power the way Sumaoro had. The Mali Empire lasted over 2 centuries on that framework. Mansa Musa, the richest human being to ever live, inherited a machine Sundiata engineered from listening, not conquering. Every modern West African family name that traces back to a Kurukan Fuga clan is living inside a constitution most history books never mention. The lion did not just learn to walk, he learned to build a floor so others could stand.